Michael Manzi.
And what do you study?
I'm a Gallatin student, so I have a major in individualized studies with a concentration in love.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Where are you from?
I'm from Ardsley, New York.
Ardsley, New York. So that's a pretty nice segue. How do you think being from Ardsley, everybody's upbringing plays some sort of effect into how they make their music? How do you think being from Ardsley, I guess, first of all, it's kind of two questions. What kind of town is Ardsley? What is that like?
It's a small suburban town.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did that play any sort of effect into your music or no?
I think more now that I'm in the city than it did back when I was there permanently. Nowadays, I kind of feel like, because it's a 40-minute train ride from campus, so
Sure.
I feel like I do a lot of my producing and my work here on campus, and then I go home and that's when I get my writing done. It's a little bit quieter, slower pace. So you have to find your niche quiet places to let things out of your brain. You got to make sure you take time for yourself.
Definitely. Now back to I guess your studies. You said you were concentrating or focusing on love.
That's true.
That's a pretty interesting thing to pick. I know some people have chosen to study the color blue. Some people have done all sorts of crazy stuff.
It's true, yeah.
So love is I would put love up there. Now you said that you're sort of looking for ties between art and love. Could you sort of elaborate on what you're sort of seeking to discover?
Yeah,
there?
for sure. My studies are based in a positive psychological theory that the mind is its most neuroplastic, it's most adaptable when you are experiencing something similar to falling in love. And so my studies aim to bring falling in love and that concept and the effects of that into everything we do, change it from something that could happen once in a lifetime to on a daily basis, so that doing things like writing music or seeing a play can all help you channel that sort of self-transcendence that we find when we experience love, and help us to take in the world and the stimulus around us better.
Going off of that, why did you? I know you gave a really great explanation of what you're studying,
right.
But and there's a lot of significance there. But sort of why did you pick that? Was there any sort of personal reason? What drove you to study sort of these psychological tendencies behind love?
That's a great question. I actually, because when I applied to Gallatin, my intentions were to study post-production cinema techniques and apply it to live theater direction. And I quickly realized that while I was passionate about the arts across the board, I didn't just want to be studying the technique of it. I also wanted to be studying the things that I was going to be creating about.
So I guess moving on, you've said that your music has sort of acid psychedelic intentions, among other things. How do you take other influences like psychedelia and blend them into what you make with your music?
Yeah, that's So the role that the psychedelia plays in my ideas and my music is very similar to the role that it plays in my studies, which is the concept of self-transcendence. And it is, as a whole, it is this idea that everything is both a small part of a whole and a whole made up of smaller parts, and that you can infinitely break things down and you can infinitely build them up. And so to this extent, there is, as much as you want to find a sense of independence in the world, there is a consistent interdependence that you can't really escape. And so whenever I'm working on my music, I'm trying to write lyrics, even if it's not about that, with that context in mind, that there is kind of no limit to how relevant different associations can be.
Interesting. That's really interesting. And a lot of what you've been telling me about, you studying love, it almost sounds in a way like theological, which I find really interesting. Do you believe in God? Are you a theist, or is this something different for you?
The way that I look at it kind of right now is that the mind in itself is entirely magical and supernatural in a very theological way that we can approach scientifically and neurologically. I'm taking a neuroscience class right now, and if there's kind of one thing that I'm getting from it is that no matter how closely we look at this stuff, there's always another question lying on the other side. So I think I think the human mind is one of the most powerful, magical things.
Oh,
I think,
without a doubt.
and that's where the root of transcendence and love it all comes from.
So also sort of the music making. I listened to your song Copper, which is
Thank
on
you,
Spotify. Yeah, good tune.
Thank you so much.
Can you dive a little bit into sort of your music making process there? Because I really liked the what was it? I liked the string intro a lot. You know,
Thank you
use
so much.
strings. So I'm assuming those were done in like a DAW of some kind,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But which they sounded great, and
Thank
I was
you so
just kind of
much.
curious, how do you go about making music, you know, in the digital sphere or not?
Well, you know, it's funny. Copper is the only song that I've produced and released up until this moment.
Uh-huh.
And the process was sort of very different from the stuff that you've heard today.
I can imagine, yeah.
You know, the things that I played today are more of a kind of like standing in the bathroom washing my face for 30 minutes kind of process.
Yeah.
Copper came about a little bit differently. I had a really strong sense of the feeling that I wanted the song to have.
Okay.
And I was workshopping it on piano for a long time before I realized that I really needed to bring it out of the acoustic world in order to get the kind of full
Sound
experience that I was
wanted,
looking for.
yeah. So yeah, my next question is basically, there's a lot of talk about how the digital age is sort of affecting love, you know, especially young love, people who have grown up with apps like Tinder and all of these different matchmaking applications, which completely change how people are finding each other, how people are meeting each other.
Mm-hmm.
You seem to be a person that's very interested in love. So I'd like to hear sort of how that affects it, and maybe even how it affects your songwriting process, you know, thinking about just basically what is your take on
Yeah,
that?
for sure.
Yeah.
It's, you know, for starters, it's totally complicated because you
Yeah.
can't expect the world to slow down, and obviously, you know, there is a totally romantic sense to writing someone a letter, but you can't expect everyone to be interested
Yeah.
in that. Regarding kind of dating and hookup culture on apps and stuff like that, I'm not against it. I don't
Mm-hmm.
personally find it useful.
Sure.
Or preferable, but I understand the desire, and I think kind of one of the major things to think about it
Mm-hmm.
is that no one. I don't think there are really many people who are on these kinds of programs wholeheartedly. I think
Yeah.
a lot of people have a lot of cynicism when they approach these kinds of profiles and look at everyone else's profile like they're a two-dimensional person who is just their profile and doesn't have the same
Yeah.
cynicism coming towards it.
That's true.
And everything, you know, that's kind of one of the rules is you got to rest in 3 dimensions, you know, because everything is
That's interesting.
at least 3 dimensions.
sure.
In regards to songwriting, it's funny because I would have to say that you can't avoid having some sometimes important conversations over text message.
Yeah.
And from songwriting to playwriting, I can't say that it hasn't helped having to have written these conversations before, then translating them to written word, either in a play or in a song. You know, I think in a lot of ways, while we are disconnected from a lot of the original intentions of language through texting and culture on our phones, we are also becoming more connected between our thoughts and our words. I think we're more able to connect our hearts to our sleeves.
I guess to close it off, I have one more
Sure.
question. I guess you'd probably describe yourself as a singer-songwriter.
Yeah, probably.
in your current state. What made you pick this kind of music versus there's so many different types, you know, tons of, you know, bedroom producers making, you know, pop, you know, rap, EDM, all sorts of different things, and you've picked from this tradition. Could you explain why you choose to approach your themes of love through this medium or this avenue rather than being like, I don't know, an R&B singer, you know,
for
or
sure.
something like that?
I mean, I think a lot of it has to do with a lot of my musical influences from when I was younger. I think the song that really started it all for me was "Good Night Moon" by Go Radio.
Okay.
Songwriter Jason Lancaster, who was originally one of the singers in Mayday Parade.
Okay.
So a lot of my earlier influence comes from that kind of alt punk rock kind of vibe. But Goodnight Moon was one of the slower, more romantic songs, and I was in a relationship when I first heard it. And I I just thought it was the most romantic thing ever. And that's the song that made me want to write. So I think everything has
Cool.
stemmed from that one. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, I think that's all the questions I have.
Thank you so much.
You know, it's great being able to interview you.
Thank you. This is a pleasure.
Yeah. This was WSN TKTK, Connor Gatesman and
Michael Manzi.
Michael Manzi. There we go.
Thanks so much.
Yep.